She blacked out at a party and woke up on black silk sheets, soaked in blood that wasn't hers. Her memory completely gone. The man watching her wasn't a stranger. He was a mafia boss who told her she'd been drugged and that someone had come into that room to kill her in her sleep. The man was dead. So the only question left was why she was still alive. She went to the party to forget her life for one night. She woke up in a stranger's bed with blood staining silk sheets and no memory of how it got there. The smell hit first, not sweat, not alcohol, iron. Scarlet Veil opened her eyes slowly, as if speed might make things worse. Light spilled across the room from windows too large, too deliberate. Her head throbbed, deep, sharp, wrong. This wasn't a hangover. This felt measured, chemical. The bed beneath her was massive. Black silk sheets clung to her bare skin, cool and expensive, like they'd been waiting for her. Nothing about this place felt accidental. Then she saw the stain, dark red, dried at the edges, spread beneath her hip. Her breath caught. Scarlet pushed herself upright too fast. The room tilted. Floor-to-ceiling glass revealed a city skyline she didn't recognize. Everything around her, furniture, art, silence, was precise, brutal in its elegance. This wasn't a stranger's apartment. This was a throne room. She felt it then. Eyes. "You're awake." The voice came from the doorway, calm, controlled. Male. Scarlet turned. He was tall, bare-chested, tattoos curling down his arm like something alive. Broad shoulders, stillness that felt trained. His gaze didn't roam, it evaluated. Not lust, assessment, ownership. "My name is Scott," he said. "And before you panic, you're alive." That didn't help. Scarlet swallowed, forcing her voice steady. "I don't remember last night. And there's blood on your bed?" Something flickered across his face, gone before she could name it. "It's not yours," he said. "And nothing happened that you didn't consent to." The words should have comforted her. They didn't. He stepped closer. She noticed the bruises on his knuckles, the faint cut at his temple. Whatever had happened hadn't been gentle, and it hadn't been about pleasure. "You collapsed outside the club," Scott continued. "You were drugged. Someone meant to take you." Her stomach dropped. "And you?" she asked. "I stopped them." The way he said it made her believe him. The way he looked at her made her afraid of what that protection might cost. Because Scarlet had only gone to the party to forget her life for one night. And somehow, she'd woken up inside someone else's war. Scarlet didn't remember standing, but she was on her feet now, arms wrapped around herself like they could hold her together. The city beyond the windows glowed cold and unfamiliar. Somewhere below, traffic moved. Normal life continuing as if she hadn't woken up in the aftermath of something violent. She turned back to Scott. "Tell me," she said, "from the beginning." He didn't answer right away. He crossed the room to a small bar set into the wall, poured water into a glass, and handed it to her. She hesitated, then took it. Her hands shook enough that some sloshed over the rim. "Drink," he said, slowly. The calm in his voice irritated her, but the water helped. Her head still throbbed. But the fog thinned enough for fear to sharpen. "You collapsed outside the club," Scott said at last. "Not inside, outside, by the service alley." Images flickered, neon light, bass thudding through brick, cold air on her skin. Nothing stuck. "I didn't see you until you were already on the ground," he continued. "Two men were with you. They weren't helping." Scarlet's stomach clenched. How do you know? Because one of them had his hand on your wrist, Scott said, flat, and you were barely conscious. She swallowed. I drink too much sometimes. You didn't drink yourself unconscious, he said. You were drugged, deliberately. Something fast acting, clean. Clean. The word made her skin crawl. She glanced at his hands then, really looked. The knuckles were bruised, skin split in places. Old blood darkened the creases. Her gaze lifted to his face, to the faint cut at his temple she'd noticed earlier. What did you do to them? She asked. His jaw tightened. Enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Silence stretched. The room hummed softly. Air circulation, something mechanical and constant. Scarlet became aware of cameras tucked into corners, small black lenses that didn't blink, of doors she hadn't noticed before, seamless and heavy. You expect me to believe you just happened to be there, she said. I don't expect you to believe anything, Scott replied. I expect you to stay alive. Her grip tightened on the glass. Did anything happen? While I was unconscious. The question hung between them, heavy and dangerous. No, he said immediately. No pause, no hedging. Nothing. How can you be sure? Because I didn't touch you. Because you didn't want to, she shot back. His eyes darkened, not with anger, but something more restrained. Because consent matters, he said, even when someone can't fight back. The words landed harder than she expected. Scarlet looked away, shame and relief tangling painfully in her chest. Part of her wanted to scream, to run, to tear the silk sheets apart until this felt less real. Another part, the colder, quieter one, knew the truth. Without him, she wouldn't be standing here asking questions. Footsteps sounded beyond the doorway, soft, purposeful. A man appeared, dressed in black, head inclined slightly toward Scott. Sir, he said. Just that. Nothing else. Scott didn't look at him. Give us a minute. The man nodded and disappeared. Scarlet stared. Who was that? Security. Just one? Scott almost smiled. No. She noticed them then, shadows reflected in glass, movement where there shouldn't be any. Guards stationed so discreetly they blended into architecture, screens flickering to life as she shifted, tracking her position. You live like this? She asked quietly. I survive like this. The word echoed inside her. Survive. Why help me? She asked. You could have walked away. I don't walk away from people who are targeted. Targeted by who? Scott met her gaze, something cold and absolute settling into place. That's the part you don't need to know yet. Her pulse quickened. Yet? He took a step closer, not invading, but closing the distance enough that she felt the weight of him. The room seemed to contract around them. You're safe here, he said. For now. And if I leave? His expression didn't change. His voice dropped, quiet and precise. If you walk out that door, Scott said, you won't survive the week. Scarlet's breath hitched. For the first time since waking, she understood the shape of the night he'd stopped and the cost of stepping back into it. Scarlet didn't move. The words, you won't survive the week, echoed in her head, steady and relentless, like a countdown she couldn't stop. Say that again, she whispered, and explain why. Scott watched her for a long moment, as if deciding how much damage the truth could do, without breaking her completely. Then he turned away, crossing the room toward the bed. The blood, he said. You asked about it. Her stomach clenched. You said it wasn't mine. It isn't. He stopped beside the mattress and looked down at the dark stain still visible beneath the silk. The sheets had been pulled tight, as if someone had tried and failed to erase what happened there. A man came here last night, Scott said, after I brought you in. Scarlet's pulse spiked. Came here how? Uninvited. Her breath caught. Security was breached, he said simply. That doesn't happen by accident. He finally looked at her again. He wasn't here for you. The relief lasted exactly half a second. He was here because of you, Scott continued. The room tilted. Scarlet grabbed the back of a chair, grounding herself. I don't understand. He thought you were leverage, Scott said. Something I'd hesitate over. Scarlet shook her head. You didn't even know me. That's what he miscalculated. A chill crawled up her spine. What happened to him? Scott's voice didn't change. He died. The word landed with brutal finality. In this room? She asked faintly. Yes. Her gaze flicked back to the bed, to the silk, to the blood. I didn't see it, Scott added. You were unconscious. I made sure you stayed that way. Scarlet pressed a hand to her mouth, nausea rising. Images she didn't remember tried to form anyway. Shadows, violence, the sound of something ending. You killed him, she said. I stopped him. That's not the same thing. It is where I come from. Silence swallowed the space between them. Scarlet's thoughts spiraled, fear tangling with a sick, unwanted understanding. Whoever Scott was, he wasn't bluffing. And whatever world he lived in, it ran on consequences. Why me? She asked again. Why would anyone think I mattered? Scott exhaled slowly. Because you were seen with me. When? Weeks ago. Her brow furrowed. I've never met you before last night. You don't remember the cafe on Mercer Street, he said. You were there with a friend. You asked me for the time. Her heart stuttered. I remember the cafe, she said slowly. I remember bumping into someone. You apologized, Scott said. You smiled, then you left. That's it, she said. That's all. For you, he agreed. Not for the people watching me. The weight of it crashed down on her. They noticed you, he went on. An unfamiliar face. Someone outside my world. Someone who didn't know she was being observed. Scarlet's chest tightened painfully. So I was bait. Yes, I didn't choose that. I know. The words were quiet. Regret threaded through them, unmistakable. I didn't choose you either, Scott added. Not for this. Anger flared, sharp and sudden. Then why am I still here? Because once they saw you, he said. They couldn't unsee you. Her nails dug into her palms. So my life just, what? Ends? No, Scott said immediately. It changes. That's not comforting. It's honest. She paced now, restless panic pushing her into motion. I had a job. Friends? A life that didn't involve blood on silk sheets? I know. You don't, she snapped. You can't. Scott stepped into her path, not blocking, but close enough that she had to stop. His voice dropped. I didn't plan to care, he said. That was the mistake. Her breath caught. People around me are assets or threats, he continued. You were neither, until last night. And now? And now, he said, eyes dark, you're under my roof. Something unspoken passed between them. Not desire, not fear alone, responsibility. Scarlet laughed softly, broken. So that's it. I brushed past the wrong man, and now I don't get my life back. Scott didn't argue. The truth settled in her bones, cold and irreversible. Her ordinary life, the one where danger was abstract, where blood only belonged in headlines, was already gone. And whatever came next would demand more than memory. It would demand survival. The silence after the truth felt heavier than shouting. Scarlet stood by the window, watching the city pulse beneath the glass. Every light a life still untouched by the shadow she'd stepped into. She didn't turn when Scott spoke again. "You should see it," he said. "See what?" "My world." She laughed under her breath. "I think I already have." "This," he said calmly, "is only the surface." He moved to a panel beside the wall. With a quiet click, the glass shifted, screens blooming to life across the far side of the room. Maps, camera feeds, streams of data she didn't recognize. Names, numbers, live locations. Scarlett's chest tightened. "What is all this?" "Information," Scott replied. "The only real currency." He gestured once. The screens reorganized instantly, as if anticipating him. "I don't rule territory," he said. "I rule access. Who gets protected? Who gets exposed? Who disappears quietly before they become a problem?" "That sounds like power," he finished for her, without ceremony. Scarlet turned to face him. "You're a criminal." Scott didn't flinch. "I operate where the law can't. Or won't." Weapons flashed briefly on one screen. Shipping manifests, blurred images of crates. On another, a list of names highlighted in red. "I stop trafficking routes," he said. "I shut down arms before they reach cities. I sell protection to people the system has already failed." "And the people who cross you?" His gaze was steady. "They don't get second chances." The door opened softly. A woman entered, tablet in hand, eyes dropping respectfully as soon as she saw Scott. "Sir," she said, "the perimeter sweep is complete. No anomalies." "Good," Scott replied. "Double night rotation." "Yes, sir." She left as quickly as she'd arrived. Scarlet swallowed. "They don't question you. They don't need to." As if summoned, another man appeared at the doorway. Older, sharp-eyed. He spoke quietly to Scott, rapid and efficient. Scott listened, nodded once. "Move the asset," he said. "Now." "Yes, sir." The man was gone. It was terrifying how easily the world bent around him. "You just changed someone's life," Scarlet said. "Several," Scott corrected. "For the better." "You don't know that." "I do," he said, "because I check." He turned one of the screens toward her. Footage of a warehouse raid. Not chaos, precision. Men restrained, women and children escorted out, wrapped in blankets, medical teams waiting. "I don't profit from suffering," Scott said quietly. "I end it." The image shifted again. Another feed, another location. This time, there was no mercy. Gunfire, bodies falling. Scarlet flinched. "And that?" she asked. "That was necessary." Her stomach churned. "You decide who deserves to live. I decide who won't hurt anyone else." The distinction felt thin. Dangerous. She wrapped her arms around herself, torn between horror and something else she hated acknowledging. Relief. Gratitude. Without him, she'd have been one of the faces blurred out, forgotten. "I should hate you," she said. "I know, but I don't," she admitted. "And that scares me." Scott's jaw tightened. It should. He stepped closer, stopping just short of touching her. The space between them felt charged, deliberate. "You think this is easy for me?" he asked quietly. "Letting you stay here. Letting you see this. Then why do it?" "Because pretending you don't exist would be worse." His voice dropped, rougher now. "Because every instinct I have says to lock this place down and never let you out of my sight." Her breath caught. "And you don't?" she whispered. "Because I'm restraining myself," he said, every hour, every minute. The honesty in it unsettled her, more than threats ever could. "You're afraid of what you'd become," Scarlet said. His eyes darkened. "I already know what I am." Silence stretched, not empty, intimate. "I don't belong here," she said finally. "No," Scott agreed. "But you're here anyway." She looked at him, really looked, at the man who commanded loyalty without raising his voice, who ended lives without blinking, who had stopped a night that would have destroyed her, a king without a crown, ruling in shadow. "What happens now?" she asked. Scott turned back to the screens, the machinery of his world humming steadily. "Now," he said, "you learn the cost." He faced her one last time, expression unreadable. "Protection isn't free," Scott said. "It always costs something." Protection, Scarlet learned quickly, came with rules. They weren't spoken aloud like laws. They appeared in small, quiet ways. Doors that opened for her, and doors that did not. A phone placed gently out of reach. A guard who smiled politely and never answered questions. She was allowed everywhere inside the penthouse, nowhere beyond it. The realization settled slowly, like fog. The first morning after Scott's warning, she woke alone in a room that no longer smelled like blood. Fresh sheets, neutral linen. The stain burned, erased, as if it had never existed. The room was immaculate, impersonal, safe. She dressed in clothes laid out neatly on a chair. Her size, her taste. Someone had paid attention. When she stepped into the main living space, the penthouse unfolded like a private world. High ceilings, clean lines. Glass walls that made the city feel close enough to touch and impossibly far away at the same time. She wandered. The library came first. Floor to ceiling shelves, leather-bound volumes, modern titles mixed with old texts in languages she couldn't read. She ran her fingers along spines, wondering how many secrets were pressed into those pages. Knowledge weaponized, comfort disguised as culture. The balcony was next. The wind was sharp, clean. Below, traffic crawled like veins of light. Somewhere down there was her old life. Friends, noise, anonymity. She couldn't reach it. Inside again, she found the security room by accident. A wall of feeds blinked to life when she crossed the threshold. Cameras everywhere. Corridors, elevators, the street outside. Even the balcony she'd just left. She stepped back, pulse quickening. He sees everything. Scott wasn't there when she noticed, but she felt him anyway. Not physically, something subtler. A presence threaded through the space, watching without hovering, allowing without releasing. When he did appear, it was never abrupt, always controlled. He'd lean against a doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. He didn't follow her. He tracked her. Meals arrived without asking. Staff moved quietly, efficiently, eyes lowering when he passed. Absolute obedience. No fear on their faces. Respect. Loyalty. That unsettled her more than terror would have. "You can go anywhere in here," Scott said one evening as they stood in the kitchen, the city bleeding gold behind him. "Except outside." Scarlet folded her arms. "You say that like it's generosity." "It is," he replied calmly. "Given the alternative. No phone, no internet, no contact," she said. "That's not protection. That's isolation. It's survival." "For who?" she asked. His jaw tightened. "Both of us." The honesty surprised her. They talked more after that. Not about escape, not about deals, about smaller things. Why she hated loud places. Why he preferred the quiet hours before dawn. why she always sat with her back to walls, why he never did. One night, she asked the question she'd been circling. Why me? Scott didn't answer right away. He poured himself a drink, didn't offer her one. At the top, he said slowly, everything is noise. Everyone wants something. Power, favors, forgiveness. He looked at her then. You didn't. That's not true, Scarlet said. I want my life back. Yes, he said, but you never tried to take from me. She frowned. That's your reason? No, he admitted. It's the excuse I tell myself. She waited. I saw you weeks ago, he continued quietly. Before the party, you were laughing with someone, completely unaware of who was watching you. I remember thinking, how does someone stay untouched in a city like this? Scarlett's chest tightened. That doesn't make me special. It makes you rare. The word lingered between them. Dangerous. You're lonely, she said, before she could stop herself. Scott's gaze sharpened, then softened. Loneliness is a luxury I don't allow myself. But it's there, she insisted. You built all of this to keep people close, and no one close at all. Something flickered behind his eyes. Pain. Restraint. You think I don't know what this looks like? He asked quietly. Keeping you here? She didn't answer. I fight myself every day, Scott said, to give you space. To not justify more. More what? Control. The word landed hard. Scarlet realized then that the cage wasn't the walls. It was the care, the attention, the way he noticed when she didn't finish her meals, the way guards stepped aside the moment she approached. She wasn't trapped. She was being chosen. That night, alone in her room, she lay awake listening to the soft hum of security systems, the distant city breathing beyond glass and steel. She should have felt afraid. Instead, the truth crept in quietly, unwelcome and undeniable. She felt safest where she shouldn't. Scarlet woke before dawn to movement. Not noise, motion. The subtle kind that didn't belong to sleep. The room was dim, curtains drawn, the city muted beyond the glass. Then the door opened. Scott stood there fully dressed, dark jacket, weapon already holstered at his side. We're leaving, he said. Her heart kicked. Now? Yes. No explanation, no argument, just urgency wrapped in control. Minutes later, they were in the elevator, descending in silence. Scarlet's pulse thudded in her ears as the doors opened to the underground garage. A black SUV waited, engine running. 2 guards. No small talk. Where are we going? She asked as Scott slid in beside her. Somewhere quieter, he replied. Somewhere mine. The city thinned as they drove. Glass towers gave way to dark roads and salt air. Scarlet pressed her forehead to the window, watching the horizon lighten. The sea appeared like a blade of steel under the rising sun. The house sat alone on a cliff, low, angular, built into stone. It looked nothing like the penthouse. No excess, no display, just shelter. This was my grandfather's, Scott said as they stepped inside. It doesn't exist on maps. Scarlet almost smiled. Almost. She walked to the windows, breath catching at the endless water below. For a moment, it felt peaceful, like a pause the world had forgotten to interrupt. That's when she heard it. The sound wasn't loud, just wrong. Gravel shifting. A door that shouldn't have opened. Scott, she said quietly. He was already moving. Gunfire shattered the calm. The glass behind her exploded inward, spraying shards across the floor. Scott shoved her down, his body a shield as bullets tore through the space where she'd been standing. Stay down, he barked. Chaos erupted. Shouts outside, More gunfire. The guards returned fire from the perimeter, their voices clipped and precise. Scarlet's hands shook as she crawled behind the kitchen island, heart hammering so hard she thought it might give her away. Another window blew out. "They found us," she whispered. "Yes," Scott said grimly. "They always do." A shadow moved outside, too fast, too close. "Scott, left!" she yelled. He turned just as a man burst through the side door. The first shot dropped him. Scott didn't hesitate, didn't flinch. He moved like violence had been written into his bones. Two more attackers followed. The third got too close. Scott's gun jammed. Time slowed. The man lunged, slamming Scott into the wall. The sound of impact knocked the breath from Scarlet's lungs. They struggled, bodies crashing into furniture, the gun skittering across the floor. Without thinking, she ran. Her fingers closed around the weapon, cold and heavy. She turned, arms shaking, aiming with instinct more than skill. "Get away from him!" she screamed. The attacker froze, just long enough. Scott twisted, elbow driving into ribs, then the throat. The man collapsed in a heap. Silence followed, thick, ringing. Scarlet stood there, gun still raised, breath tearing in and out of her chest. Blood pooled across the floor. Scott turned to her slowly. His knuckles were split. Blood streaked his jaw, his eyes sharp, focused, locked onto her. "You didn't run," he said. Her voice broke. "I couldn't." He crossed the room in 3 strides and took the gun from her hands, setting it aside before pulling her into his chest. Hard, protective, real. She shook against him, adrenaline crashing through her veins. "You're hurt," she whispered. He glanced down at himself. Not enough. Sirens wailed in the distance. Not police. His people. Within minutes, the house filled with controlled movement. Orders issued. Bodies removed. Blood cleaned with brutal efficiency. Scarlet sat on the edge of the couch, staring at her hands. They wouldn't stop trembling. Scott knelt in front of her, uncaring of the blood staining his sleeves. "Look at me," he said. She did. "I told you," Scott said quietly, voice steady as stone. "I keep what's under my roof alive." Tears burned her eyes. "This isn't living." "It is," he replied. "It's surviving." He stood, already giving orders, already unbroken. Scarlet wrapped her arms around herself as the reality settled in. There would be more blood. And it would never be hers, because he would burn the world first. The house smelled like disinfectant and salt. Night had fallen by the time the last of Scott's men left the cliff house. The windows were sealed, the broken glass replaced with temporary shields. The sea outside roared like nothing had happened, indifferent and endless. Scarlet sat on the edge of the bed in the guest room, knees pulled to her chest. A clean sweater hung loosely on her frame. Her hands were finally still, but her body felt hollowed out, as if something essential had been shaken loose and left behind on the blood-slick floor. The door opened quietly. Scott stepped inside and closed it behind him. He looked different now, not calmer, not colder. Tired. His jacket was gone. The sleeves of his shirt were rolled up, revealing bruises already blooming along his forearms. There was a thin cut at his temple he hadn't bothered to bandage. He leaned against the door for a moment, eyes closed, as if steadying himself. Scarlet had never seen him like this. "I should apologize," he said finally. She lifted her head. "For what?" "For failing." The word startled her. "They found us," he continued. "That means I miscalculated, and you paid for it. I'm alive." "Because I was fast," he said quietly. not because I was careful. He crossed the room slowly and sat on the chair opposite her, elbows braced on his knees. The distance felt deliberate, respectful, as if he didn't trust himself to be closer. You were never supposed to matter, Scott said. The words hit harder than gunfire. She swallowed. Then why do I? His jaw tightened. Because I'm human. Silence filled the space between them. Heavy, unavoidable. I've built my life on not caring, he went on making decisions without emotion. It's the only way to survive where I come from. He looked up at her, eyes dark and unguarded. And then you showed up. Scarlet's chest ached. I watched you for weeks, he admitted. Told myself it was strategy, awareness, control. A bitter smile flickered. It wasn't. What was it? She asked softly. Hope, he said. Stupidity, a weakness I thought I'd buried. He exhaled slowly, as if each word cost him something. You're my blind spot, Scarlet. And in my world, that gets people killed. Her voice trembled. Then let me go. He nodded once. That's why I'm here. He reached into his pocket and placed something on the bedside table. A phone, a passport, a slim envelope. A new name, Scott said. New accounts, enough to disappear. You'd leave tonight. You'd never contact anyone from before. Not me. Not your past. She stared at the items, heart racing. And the other option? She asked. He met her gaze. You stay. Under my protection, fully. No lies about the danger, no illusions about freedom. Her breath caught. And if I leave? Someone will always be looking for you, he said, honestly. Not tomorrow, not next week, but eventually. And if I stay? You'll be safe, he said. Then added quietly, as long as I'm alive. The weight of the choice settled over her. Outside was uncertainty, fear without boundaries, a life always waiting for the other shoe to drop. With him was a violence contained, rules. Blood kept at a distance, never hers. Scarlet hugged her knees tighter. You're asking me to trade one cage for another, she whispered. Yes, Scott said, but this one comes with guards. And you? He didn't deny it. I won't force you, he said. If you walk out that door, I won't stop you. She looked at the door, then at the passport, then back at him. Her heart betrayed her, pounding harder at the thought of leaving, then staying. I can't decide tonight, she said. Scott nodded slowly, relief and fear crossing his face in equal measure. I know, he said. That's why the choice is yours. He stood and moved toward the door, pausing with his hand on the handle. For what it's worth, he added quietly, I hope you stay. Then he left. Scarlet sat alone in the silence, staring at two futures she never asked for, and realizing she was already afraid of the one without him. Scarlet didn't sleep. She sat by the window as dawn bled slowly into the sky, the phone and passport untouched on the table behind her. The sea below the cliff was restless, smashing itself against stone as if trying and failing to escape its own gravity. By the time the sun crested the horizon, Scott was already at war. She felt it before she saw it. The house changed temperature, not physically, emotionally. Voices moved through halls with sharper edges. Doors opened and closed with purpose. Screens flickered on in rooms she hadn't entered before, bathing walls in cold light. When Scarlet stepped into the main space, the world Scott ruled was no longer hidden from her. He stood at the center of it, dark shirt, sleeves rolled, calm carved into his posture. Around him, men and women moved with absolute precision, tablets in hand, earpieces murmuring constant updates. Maps glowed across the screens, red markers blooming like infections. Scarlet hovered near the doorway, unseen for a moment. Shut down their routes, Scott said. Freeze accounts, burn intermediaries first, leave leadership exposed. A woman nodded. And the ports? Seized within the hour. Another voice cut in. They're pulling assets, going to ground. Scott didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Let them, he said. Collapse the ground. Scarlet's breath caught. This wasn't rage. This was extermination. Scott turned slightly and noticed her then. His gaze softened for half a second, barely there, before returning to steel. Stay, he said, quietly. Not a command, a request. She did. From the edge of the room, Scarlet watched the cost of being chosen unfold. Orders went out like verdicts. Names turned red, then disappeared. Feeds shifted from boardrooms to warehouses, from luxury offices to dim back rooms, where men realized, too late, that the world had moved on without them. A message came in. Scott read it once, then nodded. Asset neutralized. Another followed minutes later. Leader confirmed dead. Scarlet flinched at that one. Scott didn't. He didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He absorbed each report like a debt being settled. She understood then. This wasn't vengeance. It was responsibility, executed without mercy. Hours passed. Coffee went untouched. The sun climbed higher. By midday, the screens showed chaos resolving into order. Routes dismantled, cells isolated. Networks that had existed for decades erased in a single morning. All of it because someone had touched her. Scarlet's chest ached. At one point, she whispered, "You don't have to do all this." Scott didn't look at her. "I already am." Another name vanished from the board, the last one. Silence fell, not empty, but final. The woman with the tablet looked up. "It's done." Scott exhaled slowly. A war ended with a breath. "Good," he said. "Clean it up." People dispersed, leaving the room eerily quiet. The screens dimmed. The world he'd just burned retreated back into shadow. Scarlet stepped closer. "That was for me," she said. He turned to face her fully now. His eyes were dark, not with guilt, but with something heavier. "Yes, you dismantled an entire network. Yes. People died. Yes." Her voice trembled. "How many?" "Enough," he said. The honesty cut deeper than lies ever could. "You didn't ask if I wanted this," she whispered. Scott's jaw tightened. "Because if I had, you would have said no. And you'd have done it anyway. Yes?" The admission settled between them. Undeniable. Scarlet felt it then. The moral scar forming, slow and permanent. Safety bought with blood she didn't shed, but would always carry. "They won't come for me anymore," she said. "No," Scott replied. "You're untouchable now." The word felt heavier than threat ever had. "And the world?" she asked. "Your world?" "It knows better," he said. "Now?" She looked at him, this man who had bent crime syndicates, erased enemies, and called it protection. "You chose me," she said softly. He didn't deny it. "I chose the consequences," Scott said, "so you wouldn't have to." Outside, the sea raged on, unchanged by the violence done in its name. Scarlet realized then that nothing would ever be simple again. Not safety, not love, not morality. The enemy was gone, the danger eliminated. But the cost remained, etched into silence, into bloodless victories, into the space where innocence used to live. Scott reached for her hand, stopping just short of touching. "I won't ask you to thank me," he said. "And I won't ask you to stay." She met his gaze, steady despite the storm inside her. "But you did all this for one woman," she said. "Yes," he answered, "and I'd do it again." The war was over. What remained would be harder to survive. The fire burned clean. Scarlet watched from the edge of the terrace as the last of the black silk sheets curled inward, threads dissolving into ash. The flames didn't rage. They consumed. Quiet, thorough, final. The stain that had begun everything disappeared without ceremony, carried upward as smoke and memory. No one spoke. When it was over, there was nothing left but embers and the faint scent of scorched fabric, already thinning in the open air. The penthouse followed, walls wiped down, glass polished until it reflected nothing but sky. Every trace of violence erased with professional detachment. Blood didn't linger here. It was removed, catalogued, forgotten. By evening, the space looked untouched, pristine, as if the night that had shattered her life had never happened. Life resumed. Staff returned to their routines. Security rotated in silence. Screens glowed softly with information no longer urgent. The city outside pulsed the way it always had, indifferent, alive, unconcerned with the war that had been fought for one woman and quietly won. Scarlet stood at the window, hands folded loosely at her sides. She felt different in the stillness. Not fragile, not whole, sharpened. Like something that had been broken and reforged without asking permission. Scott found her there. He didn't announce himself. He never did. He stopped a few steps away, giving her space, as if distance were a courtesy he now owed her. "It's finished," he said. She nodded. "I know." They stood together in silence, the city reflecting faintly in the glass between them. "I'm releasing you," Scott said at last. She turned slowly. "Releasing?" "There are no conditions," he continued evenly. "No debt, no obligation. You can leave tonight, tomorrow, or never come back at all." He reached into his jacket and placed something on the console behind her. A phone, her documents, keys she didn't recognize. "Your access is restored," he said. "Your name is clean. No one is watching." Scarlet studied his face, searching for manipulation. She found none, only restraint. "You won't stop me," she said. "No." "You won't follow." "No." "And if I walk out that door," she pressed, "you'll let me disappear." "Yes." The simplicity of it hurt. She turned back to the city, absorbing the truth of her freedom. It was real. Earned with blood that wasn't hers, but would always touch her life. "You did all this," she said, quietly, "and you're letting me go." "I said I'd protect you," Scott replied, "not own you." The words settled deep. Scarlet exhaled slowly. When she spoke again, her voice was steady. "I'm staying." Scott didn't react. Not immediately. "Not because I'm afraid," she added, "and not because I don't see what this costs." He waited. "I'm staying because I understand now," Scarlet said. "There's no version of my old life that still exists, even outside these walls." She turned to face him fully. "Out there, I'd spend every day pretending I was untouched," she continued. "Here, I don't have to lie to myself." Silence stretched between them, intimate and heavy. "This isn't freedom," she said, "but it's honest." Scott's jaw tightened. "You don't owe me clarity." "I owe it to myself." She stepped closer, not into his space, but near enough that the choice felt deliberate. "I know safety isn't innocence," Scarlet said, "and love," her voice softened, "careful, isn't freedom." His breath caught, almost imperceptibly. "But it's still a choice," she finished, "and this one is mine." Scott nodded once, acceptance, not triumph. "Then you stay," he said, not as a sentence, as a fact. The city outside continued its endless motion, unaware of the quiet decision that had been made above it. Scarlet looked around the penthouse, clean, controlled, dangerous in its calm. A place where violence didn't announce itself with chaos, but with order, with protection, with rules that kept blood just out of reach. She took Scott's hand, not because she needed anchoring, but because she chose connection. The danger hadn't arrived as violence, it had arrived as protection.